Good evening, goeiemorgen, and welcome to our daily devotional reading. I hope you had a good day. My mind's a bit fried. I just came out of a conversation with a bunch of very interesting people talking about a bunch of very interesting things via Folly's Substack. Link in the description if I remember. Honestly, all I want to do now is, actually go for a walk. But it's already past 9, so better not. It's still, it's twilight still, so not impossible. But the work of a priestess never ends. And here I am. Welcome to the make-believe monastery on that note. Special welcome to the members of our make-believe monastery. That is, I suppose those actually subscribed, because people who visit are also, of course, most welcome to simply comment and go their merry way. I hold no one captive. Let each man and woman come and go as they please. That is the merry way. On that note, let's listen to Plato. Whoopsie daisy. Stranger. Listen then. There is a time when God himself guides and helps to roll the world in its course. And there is a time on the completion of a certain cycle when he lets go, and the world, being a living creature and having originally received intelligence from its author and creator, turns about and by an inherent necessity revolves in the opposite direction. One can form an entire metaphysics around that, but I will not do so tonight. Young Socrates. Why is that? Stranger. Why? Because only the most divine things of all remain ever unchanged and the same, and body. The other translation says the nature of the body, and indeed the Greek is somatos de thusis. The nature of the body is not included in this class of unchanging things. Heaven and earth is my translation. Heaven and the universe is the translation we're reading. Heaven and the cosmos is the other translation, which is a literal translation because the word cosmos is used. But if you put them together in the phrase, it is basically heaven and earth. Uranos kai kosmon. Uranon kai kosmon. Heaven and earth. As we have termed them, although they have been endowed by the Creator, the Greek reads better as its begetter, that the one who gave birth to heaven and earth, with many glories partake of a bodily nature. And you can relax now. I had limited time to prepare, and so this Greek obsession that caught me today had to end here. And therefore cannot be entirely free from perturbation. but their motion is, as far as possible, single and in the same place, and of the same kind, and is therefore only subject to a reversal, which is the least alteration possible. For the Lord of all moving things is alone able to move of himself, and to think that he moves them at one time in one direction and at another time in another is blasphemy. Hence we must not say that the world is either self-moved always, or all made to go round by God in two opposite courses, or that two gods having opposite purposes make it move round. But as I have already said, and this is the only remaining alternative, the world is guided at one time by external power, which is divine and receives fresh life and immortality from the renewing hand of the begetter, and again, when let go, moves spontaneously, being set free at such a time as to have, during infinite cycles of years, a reverse movement. This is due to its perfect balance, to its vast size, and to the fact that it turns on the smallest pivot. Young Socrates. Oops, there's more Greek. Your account of the world seems to be very reasonable indeed, stranger. Let us now reflect and try to gather from what has been said the nature of the phenomenon which we affirm to be the case of all these wonders. It is this. What? The reversal which takes place from time to time of the motion of the universe. The Greek, I think this is the last one, doesn't actually have cosmon, if I read it correctly. I was already in a hurry here. It has pantos, pas, the all. Young Socrates. How is that the cause, stranger? Of all changes of the heavenly motions, we may consider this to be the greatest and most complete. Young Socrates. I should imagine so, stranger, and it may be supposed to result in the greatest changes to the human beings who are the inhabitants of the world at the time. Such changes would naturally occur, and animals, as we know, survive with difficulty great and serious changes of many different kinds when they come upon them at once. Very true. Stranger. Hence there necessarily occurs a great destruction of them, which extends also to the life of man. Few survivors of the race are left, and those who remain become the subjects of several novel and remarkable phenomena, and of one in particular, which takes place at the time when the transition is made to the cycle opposite to that in which we are now living. What is it? The life of all animals first come to a standstill, and the mortal nature ceases to be or look older, and was then reversed and grew young and delicate, The white locks of the aged darkened again, and the cheeks the bearded man become smooth and recovered their former bloom. The bodies of youth in their prime grew softer and smaller, continually by day and night returning and becoming assimilated to the nature of the newly born child, in mind as well as body. The curious case of Benjamin Button. In the succeeding stage they wasted away and wholly disappeared, and the bodies of those who died by violence at that time quickly passed through the like changes, and in a few days were no more seen. Young Socrates. Then how, stranger, were animals created in those days, and in what way were they begotten of one another? Stranger. It is evident, Socrates, that there was no such thing in the then order of nature as the procreation of animals from one another. The earth-born race of which we hear in story was the one which existed in those days. They rose again from the ground, and in this tradition, which is nowadays often unduly discredited, our ancestors who were nearest in point of time to the end of the last period, and came into being at the beginning of this, are to us their heralds, and mark how consistent the sequel of the tale is. After the return of age to youth follows the return of the dead who are lying in the earth to life. Simultaneously with the reversal of the world, the wheel of their generation has been turned back, and they are put together and rise and live in the opposite order, unless God has carried any of them away to some other lot. According to this tradition, they of necessity sprang from the earth and had the name of earthborn, and so the above legend clings to them. Young Socrates. Certainly this is quite consistent with what was preceded. But tell me, was the life which you said existed in the reign of Kronos in that cycle of the world, or in this? For the change in the course of the stars and the sun must have occurred in both. Stranger. I see that you enter into my meaning. Know that blessed and spontaneous life does not belong to the present cycle of the world, but to the previous one, in which God superintended the whole revolution of the universe, and the several parts the universe were distributed under the rule of certain inferior deities, as is the way in some places still. There were demigods who were the shepherds of the various species and herds of animals, and each one was in all respects sufficient for those of whom he was the shepherd. Neither was there any violence or devouring of one another, or war or quarrel among them, and I might tell of 10,000 other blessings which belonged to that dispensation. The reason why the life of man was, as traditions say, spontaneous, is as follows. In those days God himself was their shepherd, and ruled over them, just as man, who is by comparison a divine being, still rules over the lower animals. Under him there were no forms of government or separate possessions of women and children, for all men rose again from the earth, having no memory of the past, and although they had nothing of the sort, the earth gave them fruits in abundance, which grew on trees and shrubs unbidden, and were not planted by the hand of man. And they dwelt naked and mostly in the open air, for the temperature of their seasons was mild, and they had no beds, but lay on soft couches of grass, which grew plentifully out of the earth. Such was the life of man in the days of Kronos. Socrates. The character of our present life, which is said to be under Zeus, and know from your own experience. Can you and will you determine which of them you deem the happier? Impossible. Then shall I determine for you as well as I can? By all means. Thus far our scripture of the evening. It's a short one. Probably I knew when I did the allocation that I would be tired tonight reading it. Sometimes there is no such thing as time and space, space-time. Again, I'll start at the end because it's fresh in my mind. And I'm going to be completely woo tonight. Brace, brace. Paradise or this? I wrote down, there seemed to be some sort of remembrance in our bones, but that was in connection to the many catastrophes that almost wiped us out as a species. It's like we remember somehow, and I think it's not impossible that we somehow remember how many times we nearly exited. And maybe that is why we're always thinking we're living in the end times. We're always thinking this is it. Because for the longest time it was actually a possibility. And then at certain points, indeed, with radical changes, it was a great possibility and almost was. Indeed, the fact that we are today is a miracle. Paradise or this, though, when God herself ruled, and I say herself explicitly because I get so pissed when people, and it's a very long tradition and it's a very honored tradition, when people project the Christian God into Plato. Maybe the God beyond God of, what's his face? Poltelich. Maybe you can project him in Plato, but the God of the Bible has nothing to do with the gods of Plato, the gods of Plato. And this God, which seemed to be ruling in the paradise phase, indeed, seems to be the God beyond God. But also there's something of a longing back, but maybe that's a longing forward. I remember when I cut off all my hair, 2020, March, 28 March, because I wanted to do it since 22 March, but I didn't want to do it before my birthday. So I waited. And as it was slowly growing, I remember feeling I missed my hair, but my hair of the future, not my hair of the past. And maybe this longing for paradise then, what we project and then write beautiful myths about, and the beautiful myths of the paradise after are all connected. Well, they're definitely all connected. Because we cannot seem to grow up. and become the divine beings that we are. Paradise or this? Oh, am I going to do this? Am I really going to go into the story of the so-called fall? Yes, apparently I am. My first encounter with the work of Jordan Peterson was the biblical analysis. Two of the young men that oh no, that's not completely true. Because before I found that, I dated a guy who was really into Sam Harris. And he, at a certain point, told me, yo, you have to listen to this talk. There's this guy who keeps talking about Jung. You're going to like this. I don't like it, but you're going to like it. And it was Jordan Peterson. And they talked of two books, Waking Up, I think, by Sam Harris, and Maps of Meaning by Jordan Peterson. At that stage, that was still the only book he wrote. I don't need to tell all this, but anyways. And I looked up both books, and I think Waking Up was like 10 euros or less, and Maps of Meaning was 80 euro or 100 euro something. So guess which book I bought? And then I didn't see anything of Jordan again until there was another guy in my life who was very into Jordan Peterson. And he said, like, oh, you have to see this biblical series. You're going to love it. It's so right up your alley. It's all about the Bible. And indeed, his interpretation of the biblical text, when he was still doing it on his own, really impressed me, because he did that as a psychologist, which he is. And he interpreted the so-called fall in exactly the right way back then, I think, as actually man coming to consciousness. What I sometimes say, I do not know if it's true or not, is that we are awakened. We are the awakened species. There's no need to strive for awakening or enlightenment or whatever. It happened. And since it happened, ever since it happened, we've been tormented by trying to figure out, was it good or was it bad that it happened? Because it gave us foresight. And I won't go into that part. Foresight, of course, where we get the name Prometheus from. Or the other way around, I suppose. Are they related? It wasn't a fall. It was a call to pick up the heaviest burden you can and carry it, to quote Jordan himself. To become adult. To become responsible. Because we are in the phase, according to Plato, or the Eleatic stranger, where God has let go of the control. The cosmos or universe, or whatever you want to interpret it as, the created, is moving spontaneously. And we're no longer like children being taken care of. We need to take care of ourselves. That is the age we live in. Man, the closest thing to a divine being. Agents in this age. So I want to say, if you're still dreaming of paradise, then grow up. It's as simple as that. But maybe I'm wrong. I have been wrong. It is a beautiful thing, I think, for a priestess of wisdom to follow and learn from folly. We don't really learn from anything else. May the spirit of Sophia be with you.